Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ across the way, somewhere in Knoxville, Tennessee as well. It's Locked On Vols and Volquest own Eric Cain. Eric, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Yeah, doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Before we even get started with my Vol-related questions, Eric, now that you spent another week with the Volquest folks, what was your favorite Volquest travel story to Orlando this past week?
It's not really a travel story, but man, Brent Hubbs, he would cook us dinner every night. You know, we ate out a couple of nights, but about 4 or 5 nights about 3 or 4 nights we were there, man, Brent would cook, and he cooked steak and chicken and pork chops one night. Man, it was the dude can cook, so yeah, we weren't hungry throughout the week.
There you go. I like it. Eric, the biggest. This is you're not going to believe this, but a lot of people are talking about Nico Iamaleava coming out of the Iowa Citrus Bowl. The biggest flash for you from Nico's performance, his first start in Tennessee Orange, was what, sir?
You know, it wasn't really a flash, to be honest with you. It was, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of, throws where you're just like, man, wow, like, look at that. Like, I remember in the orange and white game back in the spring, pocket collapse, he rolled out through to Ethan Davis on the sideline on the run, and I'm like, wow, that's a play. Mm-hmm. He didn't really have any of those, and that's okay. Yeah. He didn't have to be Superman through the air. I mean, Tennessee ran for 230. He ran for 51 yards minus all those sacks that he took. He ran for 3 touchdowns. I think my biggest thing was just the way nothing looked too big for him. Nothing seemed to rattle him. I mean, he was running for his life. He was sacked 6 times. That defense was really good, despite Tennessee whooping it up a little bit. And again, like the score, I mean, Tennessee whooped that tail, but I mean, Tennessee's offense still punted 7 times. James Pierce gave the offense 2 touchdowns, essentially, right? With his pick 6, and then first and goal from the 4. And so, really, the offense didn't do a whole lot, but it was in control of that football game. And, that defense, long-winded, kind of get back to what I was saying, that defense is still pretty stout. But nothing fazed Nico. There was no pre-snap penalties. He ran the offense well. Tempo was about as good as I've seen it all year long. And he was just in control. He looked like a guy that was ready. And that was my biggest takeaway. It was going to be a long offseason if Nico went out there and threw a couple picks and didn't look very good. It was quite the opposite. He had a pretty good day, and so I walked away really impressed.
Yeah, it was like, because remember last year everyone was all up in arms over Joe Milton's performance in the Orange Bowl, the Orange Bowl against Clemson. Yeah. And Britt and I talked about it on the pod afterward. We were both like, I don't know if people watched the same game, but like, yeah, he had a couple open shots to Ramel down the right-hand side. That was it was very Sports Center-y in some of the bombs, but there were a lot of 3-and-outs. There were a lot of bad sacks. The offense definitely didn't look as fluid as it did during the Hendon Hooker time under center. I think what we saw from Nico was like a blend between the two, where I don't think we saw like peak Hendon Hooker. We might never see a quarterback have that kind of year that he had in 2022, but it was a blend of, look, man, Joe, I don't know how many sacks he would have taken based on the way that game had unfolded in Orlando, but I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be more than 6 based on what we saw there. And his ability to navigate in the pocket was what flashed the most for me. Is just that, like, Heupel, you can see, and he was pretty jovial after in the presser, and he's joking with Nico. You can just tell there is something to having a quarterback can do stuff when things break down. And Joe, look, good dude, good teammate, all that. When things, like when they changed things in the middle of the year, it was, you're going full robot. You're doing like, this is where we're going to go. And it won them 8 games, and it worked to an extent. You're up on Alabama at the half. Like, they found a way to utilize Joe the best they could. But you still need that running element. You still need that guy who can just create and put a whole lot more pressure on opposing defenses, because you just don't know what he's going to do. And Nico was just a natural runner. And I did not think we were going to see that many design runs and Nico just being that comfortable running the football. And I think Tennessee's offense, to be a top 10 scoring offense again in the country, they have to have that.
You go back and you watch Nico in high school, and a lot of times he was kind of running for his life. He was creating. And so it wasn't a huge surprise whenever he got in the game against Virginia, whenever he got in the game against UConn. And so, he appeared in 4 regular season games prior to the bowl game. Didn't see an awful lot of them, don't get me wrong, but when you did, you saw him move out of the pocket. You saw him step up in the pocket. You saw him take off and run. And so kind of coming into this bowl game, you knew that was a strength for him. You knew that just his awareness, Madden ratings, back in the day, and you go and look at the awareness. I mean, Nico's kind of through the charts, and you can tell that he was coached well. You can tell that he's repped this time and, over kind of coming into college. And that was something, again, that was just kind of on full display. And I think that's going to be a real asset for him and Tennessee's offense, moving forward into 2024. I mean, the 250, 300 yard, passing games, those are going to come. Those wow throws are going to come. But when things aren't going well, when things are breaking down, still the ability to move the chains and give yourself another chance. I mean, I think that's what Nico brings that Hendon could do that Joe couldn't. And kind of to your point, and I'm with you, man. I mean, those 2 quarterback runs for touchdowns, the design ones, the quarterback sweep and the draw, man, that was awesome. It was blocked up well. Dylan Sampson, Cam Seldon both had some good blocks on those runs. You didn't see those called, for the previous quarterback. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see kind of what this all looks like behind a veteran offensive line, some weapons at receiver, and some young, exciting running backs.
Well, I have some questions about the receiving room in a second, but in terms of the biggest worry based on what you saw, is it just the offensive line? Is it, hey, and this is something that I just don't think is going to go away. And, the general's quarters, they're very excited about Brew McCoy being back, but still not a lot of open dudes, not a lot of flash at wide receiver in that game, not a lot of streaking wide open receivers. They took 1 total deep shot in that game. So we didn't really see Nico, and maybe that was just the offensive line stuff. Maybe it was not trusting the receivers. I don't know what it was, but that's another element that we did not see really at all this year that we saw a year ago. I mean, what to you is the biggest worry for his first year as a starter based on what you saw?
Well, I do think the wide receivers that took a step back in 2022, and coming into the year, man, I missed on that. I thought Tennessee's wide receivers were going to be just fine. You lost a Blitnikoff Award winner, you lost another 3rd rounder receiver. Like, I knew all that, but having Brew back, knowing what Squirrel could do, I bought in 110% to Dante Thornton, and I still think there's a lot with Dante Thornton that he just hasn't done yet. I think he was playing out of position. He was starting to come around a little bit there towards the end of the year before his injury. But point being, I mean, you lost those 2. You lost Brew after 5 games. Dante Thornton never showed up. That room really disappointed in 2023. That's got to get a whole lot better in 24. And I think Brew is going to be just this nice, calm presence. What he can do with the ball in his hands. He knows this offense. He knows the why behind this offense, not just what to do, but why you're doing it. Chris Brazo, and again, we got to be careful because myself included bought into the hype of Dante Thornton last year, but I do think Chris Brazo is kind of the real deal. He's proven he's done a whole lot more than what Dante Thornton did coming into Tennessee. I like his skill set. I like Squirrel. I like the young guys in the room that are being added, and Mike Matthews and Braylon Stayley. So I'm excited to see how that group can respond. So that group has got to get better. I guess my biggest concern would be you got to figure out who's going to play where on the offensive line. With that new ruling that allows transfers to transfer again, we'll see by the end of the week exactly if any other former transfers lead Tennessee's program. That's always a concern. But you are bringing back a veteran group up front. That's good. But those tackles struggled in the Citrus Bowl. Who's going to play guard? Is it going to be Jackson Lampley, who has a whole lot of confidence after playing the last couple of games of the season? Could it be a freshman that come in? Could Tennessee get somebody out of the transfer portal to kind of finalize that offensive line with a lot of veteran tackles, Javonte Spraggins, Cooper Mays, and all that? But Tennessee's got to block better for Nico next year than they did in the Citrus Bowl, and they will. I mean, again, Iowa's a pretty stout front seven, but that would be a concern. Just trying to figure out who is where on the offensive line and protecting him better in the pass sets.
That's fair. To bring it more towards the receivers. So now Brew is officially back. A really horrific injury, and that my dad saw when we were we were at the South Carolina game. Like, oh no, that's bad. And it was one of those where you're like, oh, this is way worse than it, and then everyone realizing just, that's it. Season's over. Like, I don't know what's happening for Brew. So it was tough. But you look at last year's room, and we talked about it. Like, a lot of us were wrong about like what kind of drop off there would be, if any, because hey, Ramel and Joe. They had a lot of rapport in the second team, and they've thrown together. They shined in the Orange Bowl. That should be fine. Ramel should make the leap. Squirrel with a full slot role, he should make the leap. And Squirrel was good for the most part. Wouldn't say he's elite. I wouldn't say he wasn't like just putting fear in just every defensive coordinator's just feels like Jalen Hyatt was the year prior, but he was solid. He was solid.
Yeah.
And then Brew, solid. Great blocker, did a lot of help on the screen game here for Squirrel, especially early in the year, but not really. He's not a Cedric Tillman. Like Cedric Tillman was someone you could target 25 times against Pitt, and he could go and just make it work. It's crazy to say, but like Tillman was just really undervalued from what Tennessee was 2 years ago, and I understand he was banged up, but like Tillman popped, and he's an NFL receiver. Jalen Hyatt obviously popped. There wasn't an NFL receiver, I don't think, in this group. And I don't know where Brew will be after next year. But I think the Tennessee fans who look at the return, and we'll see what he looks like coming back from this kind of injury. If you're starting Brew again, you're starting Squirrel again in the slot, and maybe Nimrod or Caleb Webb at the other side, or Chris Brazzell. We'll see how Chris Brazzell. But I don't think you can pencil in guys like that anymore based on what we just saw with Dante Thornton. Like, this offense is hard to learn for receivers. The staff loves guys who've been with this program for a long time. I don't know that it's a slam dunk that the receiver room makes a big leap next year, because for me, I have 2025 circled where I'm really, really high on Mike and I'm really, really high on Braylon. They'll probably have a much bigger opportunity and role as sophomores. I think their upside and ceiling's a lot higher. I don't know. Do you think that's fair to just still be pretty cautious about the talent and what Tennessee is going to bring for Nico in 2024 in the receiver room?
Yeah, for sure. Again, like I've already said a couple of times, man, I'm not giving up on him. Again, I mentioned the with the new ruling, the transfers can leave again. That's something to watch as the week goes on, through Friday. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but guys like Dante Thornton, who did not have the year that he wanted. Tennessee goes and recruits another outside wide receiver.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, well, he could be looking to try to get out. So my point is, I still think that there's a lot that he can do. I mean, he's got an NFL skill set. So we'll see what he can do down the line. But yeah, I mean, I was bought in 110% for him, and he didn't show up. I thought from what I saw from Ramel Keaton stepping up, and he did such a fantastic job in 2022, that he was going to do that and maybe a little bit more in 23. And man, the writing was on the wall when he dropped that bomb in the Virginia game from Joe Milton. It was like he never recovered, and he had just kind of a down year. And then when the injuries hit, and I thought Chaz Nimrod did a pretty good job, but I mean, Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb are not Javonte Payton, are not Cedric Tillman. And so to be, optimistically cautious, I think is very fair, because a lot of people, myself included a little bit, just thought, oh, well, it's Heupel's scheme. He's going to scheme people wide open because he's done it for 2 years. Well, his first year, he had Velus Jones, Cedric Tillman, Javonte Payton. Those are pretty good players. Velus Jones hadn't done a lot in the NFL, but he's in the NFL. Okay. Cedric Tillman's there. Second year, you had Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman. And then this year, you didn't have either one of them, and you lacked that explosiveness. So, to see if those guys can come around. And how much does that have to do with quarterback? We'll see. I mean, we will see. Can Nico elevate that group as well, where Joe maybe couldn't? I still think these are answers we're going to find out in 2024, but to be cautiously optimistic, for sure, I think that's very fair.
I'm gonna get Kelsey Pope's number, and I'm just gonna text him every day and be like, Mike needs to be in the rotation. Mike needs to be in the rotation. Like, put Mike in the rotation. Because I don't know. It just kind of scares me. What they're going to start, and they like their three. I don't know. We're going to see. I'm very, very curious how the wide receiver room unfolds. Maybe it's a spring battle for Thornton and Brazel, where whoever wins out in the spring, and it's clear that they're going to be the other starting wide receiver opposite of Brew on the outside. Maybe the person who loses that battle, then they leave in the spring portal window. Maybe that's how it unfolds there, just to at least give a full off season here to see how it goes between the two of them, because they have such a similar skill set, and you're not going to play a whole lot barring injury, and Tennessee dealt with a lot of injuries at that spot obviously this past year. So that is something weird that maybe helps this room, is that look, injuries happen and they can show, hey, like, we like these guys, he might be ahead of you right now, but things happen. This football is a violent sport, and you could easily step right in, steal the job, do great, and never look back. Because if you do prove it, they will ride these receivers long term. So I think that's a positive. We talked about the portal. Where else should the Vols target in the portal to you, Eric? Where do you think they haven't hit that you're like, and why is it safety?
Yeah, so you look at safety, man. You got Andre Turrentine that I think you're feeling pretty good about. He was not great. He wasn't bad, and made that play in the Iowa game, and thought he did some good things against Georgia, ironically, with Georgia and how good it is. But you got Andre Turrentine coming back. Man, I'd love to say John Slaughter is a guy you can count on, but we saw him play 4 snaps.
Which was your favorite of the 4?
Say what?
Which was your favorite of the 4 snaps that he played? There's a lot.
I don't even remember. It was a flash in the pan, man. 4 snaps and a 35-0 win in the I keep want to say Iron Bowl. 35-0 win in the Citrus Bowl, which is ridiculous, man. But they love John Slaughter, and but we just, as reporters and fans, we don't know what to expect because we haven't really seen him play. So you got him, and you got Jordan Thomas, who's probably going to play at the star, but he can play safety as well. You need to attack safety. To your point, you need to go and find another safety, in my opinion. You did with Jacoby Thomas. Jamal McCoy is a corner that I think is going to play a lot, and I like his upside. So going and looking at the defensive back, but man, I would. Offensive line, depending on if a tackle leaves this week, probably need to go get a tackle. But right now it's all guard. Need to go in and find a guard. You need to go and find a guy like an Andre Carrick who came in and, was a body and, started the first couple of games of the year, but really at a position to where there was a hole and there wasn't a whole lot of bodies. Need to go in and find a guard. And so I would be pinpointing safety. I'd be pinpointing guard, and you already took tight end, of course. It would be great to add another tight end just because you need those bodies, but you don't want to run anybody off, you don't want to make Ethan Davis mad. So I would say safety and guard is still where I would be evaluating to try to add to this team.
I'm very curious if Boo plays right away, because I think Boo is like one of those guys, because you had to hold on and fight for so long at the end, especially with Colorado and Michigan early. My gut tells me he's going to have to play. Like, Boo is like the linchpin of a lot of this stuff, that Boo is just going to, because you're so thin there, that's the one where Tim Banks, because he's coaching safeties, he's going to have to play the young guys. Like John Slaughter, we know is going to, barring injury, will be one of the starters in the back end. And I don't worry about Turrentine. Like, anyone who looks at that, Wesley Walker, 3-star transfer in from Tech. I don't think any Tennessee fan thought he would be an just playing unbelievable amount of snaps and also being like the PFF best graded DB for Tennessee last year. Yeah. Like, no one saw that, and he became like a consistent player. Like, he deserves credit. Like, Jalen McCullough had a good year, so it's not like we're against the results. It's just more of like, hey man, those bodies are going to be out the door, and you're just, I don't know. Like, Brent and I were talking about it I think last week, but I just think there's a path to the Tennessee back three between Thomas, the 2 Thomases, and a totally new fresh face, John Slaughter, who did not play at all at the other spot, where the back end for Tennessee could be the worst in the Heupel era. Like, it just because of inexperience, because it's a big move up for the MTSU kid. Jordan Thomas, we'll see if he can stay healthy for a full year. Like, Christian Charles, obviously never been able to stay healthy in that spot. Danico's out the building. I don't know. It really worries me. I would feel a lot better if they added another portal safety, and I don't know who that is, but I think it's just something I've penciled in of, like, Tennessee fans, just get ready, because this is something to monitor the next fall.
Well, it's funny because for the last 3 years, not all fans, but a lot of fans have been, calling for Tim Banks' job, calling for Willie Martinez's job, and, saying the secondary is awful and the secondary is terrible and bench them all and start over. Well, here you are. I mean, you are starting completely over. Slaughter gone, Haddon out of eligibility, Turnage gone, Warren Burrell gone,
McCullough gone.
McCullough graduated, Walker gone, McDonald gone. I mean, you are starting completely over. And so, a lot of that I think is a good thing because I think some of these younger guys are more athletic, quicker. They just lack experience. And a lot of coaches, these two coaches and Tim Banks and Willie Martinez in particular, love what they know. Yeah. And that's why McCullough and Walker and McDonald and these guys played so many snaps because they knew where they were going to be. They knew their deficiencies, but they knew they were going to be in position every single time usually. And so that, really kind of had a downfall effect for John Slaughter, who might be better athletically, but he might not know the entire playbook right now, or might not be as comfortable in the scheme right now because he's a true freshman. So you go with what you know. And so anyway, man, I'm intrigued. I think that's obviously the biggest storyline outside of Nico going into the season. Brand new defensive secondary. Who's going to be where? You like Ricky Gibson a lot. Who's going to play the other corner? Who's going to be those two safeties? Is Jordan Thomas healthy? If not, what's your backup plan? And I think it's worth noting too, that group has gotten better and better and better every year. They're not world beaters, the defensive secondary, but they've gotten a whole lot better in 3 years with Tim Banks, Willie Martinez.
A lot of the same dudes, though. They didn't move on. It was that same group of guys. Like T-Mac was around, Wesley Walker obviously for 2 years, McCullough the whole time. Like it was guys that were there for a while, and you didn't have that turnover. Yeah. Now you just have fresh faces. I would just be very surprised, and this is how we can end it here, Eric. Which freshman of the 2023 class will end up playing the most in 2024? Because my gut says Boo / Marcus Gorey would be my guess. Is that your pick, or do you think it's somebody else who ends up playing the most snaps right now as a freshman?
I would say Boo because I think he'll be the returner no matter what. Yeah. I think he'll be the punt returner. I think he'll be a kick returner. And like you said, I think he's a guy that's going to be knocking on the door to play in the defensive secondary because I think he's a gamer, and I think that he's a guy that just has a nose for the football. And so, we'll see. I like Boo. It's so crowded at wide receiver right now. I'd love to say Mike Matthews. It's so crowded at Leo right now. I'd love to say Jordan Ross. Yeah. But it's how does he adapt to Rodney Garner's coaching? Will he have a small role like Caleb Herring had this year to where you're not redshirting, you're not one of the top 2 or 3 guys, but you do have a small little role. We'll see. But I'll say Boo. I think there's a lot of confidence in Boo Carter to be a guy that can play special teams and a guy that will be in the running to be one of those safeties or be that star if Jordan Thomas is out with injury or something. Because I think there's some versatility to Boo's game, and he's a gamer, man. I covered and called a lot of his high school football games, and he's special. He's going to be fun to watch. Tennessee fans are going to love him.
I love it. Eric, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Volquest.com and Locked On Vols this week?
I've said it all week. I know it's annoying, but I'm going to say it again because I know I sound like trash right now. Typically, the voice is better. You might not like what I'm saying, but at least I sound better saying it. I get over some sickness right now, but every single day over at Locked On Vols, 30 minutes or less, and, man, everything you want to know about Tennessee. Recruiting, football, obviously, transfer portal, basketball, baseball, everything. It's at Volquest.com. Come join the family at the General's Quarters. They'll welcome you. They'll compliment you. Come on, check us out over at Volquest.com.
There you go. Subscribe today, Volquest.com and Locked On Vols, your daily home that I love listening to all things Tennessee Vols with Eric Cain. Eric, thank you as always, my friend, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Chase, as always, man, thanks so much.